Jay, as we approach the home stretch of the NBA season, talk of postseason awards is beginning to heat up. Both Kobe Bryant and LeBron James have made strong statements in the MVP race, especially this week with a pair of 50-point performances. But there is another, more surprising maybe, award that the two may be even more deserving of. Here with the details is Slam magazine columnist Vincent Thomas. Vincent, what is this other award being talked about involving both Kobe and LeBron?
Well, and then I think you have to add Chris Paul into that discussion as well. You take those three people, they're probably, those three players, they're probably the three most deserving of the Most Valuable Player award. But you could also put them into the discussion for the Most Improved Player award. And the way things usually go with that award is they take young players who maybe had their first really good season, and it's usually because maybe their minutes increased or just because of the natural progression of young players. But when you look at what's happened with Kobe and LeBron and Chris Paul as well, these are players that between the end of last season and right now have basically improved to the point where they don't even have a flaw in their game. I mean, Kobe Bryant is now trusting his teammates. He's discerning with his shot selection. He's a great leader. LeBron is now a fourth quarter closer. His outside shot has improved. He's actually getting a killer instinct on defense. And Chris Paul went from being, probably the best young point guard to probably the best point guard in the league, period, having one of the better seasons that any point guard in the history of the NBA has had. So those three players have had much more impactful and compelling improvements over the season. And to me, they're the most deserving of the MVP and the MIP.
It's nice to see another name in there, though, in Chris Paul. That'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. Let's focus on the Western Conference. How has Yao Ming's injury affected not just Tracy McGrady, but also the Denver Nuggets?
Well, for the Denver Nuggets, they are they're the biggest bunch of underachievers, in the NBA. When you think about the fact that they came into the season as title contenders and they have all that talent, they have two all-stars and supposed franchise players. For them to play the way that they play is a big disappointment. They're the most boring 100-point scoring team in the NBA. A lot of times it looks like an MTV celebrity game. And what happened is when Yao went down, it put pressure on them to now make the playoffs. When Yao was still there and Houston was surging and Golden State was staying pat, Denver could rest on the argument that, well, the West is so tough, that's why we didn't make the playoffs. But now that Yao is out, it's incumbent upon them to make the playoffs, or else this season will really go down as one of the bigger disappointments in recent years based on the preseason projections. And then with Tracy McGrady, he's always fought this reputation of not being able to carry a squad, maybe shrinking at moments when he's supposed to rise and transcend. And what you see him doing in these 5 games without Yao is actually carrying the team. He's putting the team on their shoulders, and he's really looking like he's going to vanish his prior reputation. But he has a 4-game stretch coming up soon where they play Utah and they play New Orleans and they play some of the Western teams that they haven't yet played during this 16-game win streak. If he does well then and then he gets that team into the playoffs, Tracy McGrady has a new reputation.
On another note, there was a lot of action pre-trade deadline and now after the trade deadline. Sam Cassell, P.J. Brown, Tyronn Lue, they made movement after the trade deadline. How will their presence there affect those teams?
Well, specifically with Sam Cassell and P.J. Brown over there with Boston, one of Boston's flaws coming into the season was the fact that besides the big three, they were young and inexperienced, and the team as a whole was thin. They didn't have a lot of depth. Well, now going into the playoffs, probably their biggest hole, which was that backup point guard position. You don't want Eddie House, playing backup point guard in the playoffs. Now they bring in somebody who was built for the playoffs in Sam Cassell, and they have another big veteran body in P.J. Brown, and it really shored the team up, and it might have as much impact as some of the splashier trades. And with Tyronn Lue, with Dallas, Jason Kidd was getting toasted by some of those younger point guards in the Western Conference. Chris Paul had an incredible game against him. Deron Williams just went off. Tyronn Lue is a pesky defender, perimeter defender, and in those 15 to 20, 25 minutes that he'll play coming off the bench, he'll allow Jason Kidd to move over to playing defense on the 2-guard, and it really shores up their guard rotation. So we might see these two less splashier, more reserved signings maybe even pay bigger dividends in the playoffs.
Finally, Vincent, I know you wrote a column recently, again with Slam Magazine, about what you call the platinum age of the NBA. What does that mean?
Well, in the 80s, you know, in the early 90s with Bird and Magic and Michael Jordan, that was called like the golden age. And that was, you know, the time where the NBA's popularity was booming. You know, the ratings were great. And, you know, the talent was incredible. And then there was a drought for, you know, really about 10 years after Michael's first 3 championships until about the early millennium, where talent was never players were never realizing their talent. There was some malcontents in the league, and the popularity of the league and the overall perception of the league really took a hit. But starting in about 2003 with the LeBron class on till now, you've really seen things really blossom. I think there's more talent in the league right now than ever before. You have a situation in the West where there might be 9 teams at the end of the year that have over 48 or 50 games won. The stars are likable, and just in general, the NBA is in the midst of a renaissance. And because the young guys don't really wear gold anymore, they wear platinum. Instead of calling it the golden age, this is a new age. We're calling it the platinum age now.
Very nice. Now it all makes sense. Vincent Thomas of Slam Magazine, very interesting stuff. Thank you for joining us here on ESPN First Take.
Thanks.
The madness, by the way, continues tonight out west as Tim Duncan